Hi, I'm Kirby. Welcome to the studio. Welcome to my mess. On Fridays, it's my chance to connect with you, to share what I'm working on. Hopefully it's inspiring, maybe a little bit interesting. So this week, one of my big focuses was working on my horse anatomy. You guys know I love horses and I want to be better at drawing them. So one of the things that I was doing this week was studying the skeletal and musculature of horses. And I found it really helpful to be able to help me memorize it, right? Is by framing it in comparison to human anatomy. Specifically the clavicle region of the horse. You know, we are upright and horses, that circle is opening forward towards us. So I spent a lot of time working out the bone structure and how similar and different we are, as well as, you know, these joints and which way they bend. It's actually very similar to us, but the proportions and the lengths of these different spaces between the joints, I'll describe it as, is very different. And in order for me to memorize it so that I can draw it out of my head, I have to study it. One of the resources I highly, highly recommend is the Famous Artists course. This course was created by a bunch of highly regarded illustrators, and it's pretty much a college course all wrapped up into a series of several books, and it's free online. It's out of print, so you can find it really anywhere online. There are a lot of different versions, so it's a rich text full of tons of information, and that's where I was getting a lot of my information and some of the pictures and diagrams of horses that I was working on this week. I was working on a cover for Uncanny magazine, and though I'm not ready to share that work in progress, I will share with you the background. Now, this painting that I'm doing, it'll be a digital painting that I create with my tablet. However, I have to get my hands messy with every painting, and so the background for this picture is actually done first with airbrush, and I'm using a Copic marker airbrush. Why? It's just not as messy, and as you can see from the background, it's messy enough in here. So a marker, an airbrush spray is just like a lot cleaner and easier to clean up than getting out paint. So I laid down an airbrush first layer, and then on top of it I used my favorite Prismacolor pencils to get this rainbow ombre that I will scan in and put into the computer and then draw on top of. And this way some of those traditional textures turn up in the final work and it doesn't get too digitally looking. Now, if you've ever worked with Prismacolor pencils, you know that it takes a lot of layers. And I've even spoken about this in my Prismacolor mini lecture that you can find on my YouTube channel. But it takes a lot of layers, and one way to kind of cheat that is to put down a layer of another medium to put the color pencil on top. That could be marker, that could be paint, that could be even Sharpie marker can work if you're working in a really dark area, and it just it's kind of a time saver, but also adds that, you know, that rich backing so you're not seeing any of the paper come through, especially if you're working on a textured paper. The only downside of this is, like with Copic markers, is that the color, you know, it really sucks the color when you're using like a Bristol board or something that's really nice for color pencils. If you use a Copic marker on one of those really absorbent papers, it's really gonna suck your marker dry. And that's why I like the airbrush, because it lays it on without like draining my marker. Now an airbrush can kind of drain as well, but I think it's a better alternative than laying down the marker if I'm not using like a marker paper that, you know, is much, much slicker. So that's my progress on that. I've got a new mini quilt in the works, and you can really see how the colors from the painting that I'm working on is kind of bleeding into, you know, my quilt. I mean, which came first? Was I inspired by the fabric, or did the painting inspire picking the fabric? I don't really know. That's what, you know, the living canvas, my blog, is all about, is that everything I do and everything that I touch is connected and is art. And so this pattern that I'm making for another mini quilt is really tough. Making patterns is really, really difficult, especially making sure all the shapes fit together and, you know, working with standard sizes or maybe abandoning standard sizes. But this is going to be a really fun one that I'm doing, and I can't wait for you guys to see it done. I'll probably get sewing on it this weekend, and we'll see, maybe by next week I'll have a mini quilt to share with you. Now, I mentioned another quilt in my last video that used the organic quilt technique from my organic quilt tutorial. And it was going great, and I was really proud of the background, and I started to sew on the binding, and I was working kind of like it was at night, and the lighting was kind of weird. I mean, there's been no lighting in Michigan here lately, but I like got it halfway done, and then the next day I was like sitting on the couch and I kind of looked at it from far away, and I go to Evan, my husband, and I'm like, that pink like doesn't match it at all, the binding. And he's like, yeah, it really doesn't. So I actually like ripped out the whole binding of this quilt. And so I got to head to the quilt store, darn, to try to find the right color pink. So I think I might be headed to the Heartland Quilt Shop this weekend to see if I can find something that will match better. I know that they'll have something for me. They always do, and more. I like to have what I call a slow project. And artists, if you're watching, let me know if you kind of have a slow project. It's a project that doesn't have a deadline. It doesn't have anything. It's not for anything. It's just something that you can work on from time to time, and you can set it down for like a month or weeks or whatever, and then you can pick it right back up. So for my getting excited about the weather starting to change, although that's, you know, words out about that here in Michigan. But my patio, you know, we are just creating this really dreamy tropical space. And I think that we really need a tropical quilt out there for those chilly nights. And so I started working on these quilt squares. I really like the idea of quilt squares that are really traditional, right? They look like your grandmother's quilt, but I'm using these really modern fabrics, these really tropical modern fabrics to create the blocks. And I'm just, no two blocks are gonna be the same. They're 12 by 12. And so I've built a couple of these, and I will be diving into that more. And you'll see this evolve. I don't know, there might be one time where I power through and I get it done, but as of right now, I'm just kind of doing like a block a week or something like that. But hopefully we'll have something to wrap ourselves in this summer around the fire, and maybe some more. I don't know, we'll see. One of the things I can't really share with you visually, but I can tell you about, is my writing. And I was revisiting a story that I had already written a while ago, and I really came to it with fresh eyes. On Monday, my mini lecture, I always put out a mini lecture on Mondays, and my mini lecture is going to be about how to catch your mistakes in your art and these different techniques that you can do to spot mistakes. And one of those things is time. And spoiler alert, right? And giving yourself time away from a project just gives it this fresh eye. And man, it applies to everything. So with my writing, spending some time away from this project and coming back, my eyes are really wide open. And I've also learned a lot from some of the other things I've been writing lately. And so that has been really exciting to get back into. But boy, is it an undertaking. Writing is a domino effect, like any art. You change one thing and all the dominoes fall to have to work that out. So today, that's what I'm working on. I'm gonna try to pick up the dominoes of this story and get it back together. Thanks for listening. Thanks for checking out what I have, putting up with my mess. Have a good one. As always, I appreciate likes, subscribes, sharing my videos, and I'll see you on Monday for a mini lecture. Bye.